Well, it's finally here, guys. I deeply, first off, want to apologize to you straight off the bat without further ado, guys. I am so sorry that this review is so late. And the reason why is simply because I had too much space on my laptop when this movie came out. And so I just didn't have enough room to talk about it. But now that it's here, guys, I'm going to give you a really full, extensive rundown on my personal thoughts on this brilliant masterpiece, which is, I've got so much to talk about, guys, A Quiet Place Part 2. Yes, that's right, guys. But without further ado, guys, those of you, first of all, who are new to my YouTube channel and you've never heard or seen my videos before, this is an absolutely incredible warm welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, and if you'd like to, go ahead and subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and leave a thumbs up on this review. Thanks so much for doing that, guys. I really, really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. So guys, what I do in my movie reviews is I actually give you the opening of my movie review. I give you the cast, the director, the duration of the movie, and what it's rated, and all that sort of stuff, and the genre. So without further ado, guys, I'll roll that intro and all the good stuff, and then I will give you my personal views on A Quiet Place Part 2. Let's roll that intro. First off, we have Emily Blunt reprising her role from the sequel back again as Evelyn Abbott. Also reprising her role from A Quiet Place is Millicent Simmons, back again playing Regan Abbott. Also reprising his role, we have the incredible John Krasinski, back again also as Lee Abbott. And once again, from A Quiet Place, Noah Jupe as Marcus Abbott. And the newest cast member to be in A Quiet Place 2, we have Cillian Murphy, who plays the character of Emmett. 2021. And back as the director from A Quiet Place, we have John Krasinski back to direct A Quiet Place Part 2. 1 hour and 37 minutes long. Drama, horror, sci-fi movie. Rated M for mature audiences. A Quiet Place 2 synopsis. Following the events at home, the Abbott family now face the terrors of the outside world. Forced to venture into the unknown, they realize the creatures that hunt by sound are not only threats lurking beyond the sand path. So if you didn't know, A Quiet Place Part 2 is the direct sequel to A Quiet Place, who directed and starred John Krasinski. And one of the things I want to talk about really depthly about this movie is how unbelievably difficult it is to actually pull off a successful sequel. The storyline, the way that it goes, everything about it really just needs to really hit the audience really hard, and specifically something of this caliber. For anyone who has been following my channel for any period of time, and those of you who are new to my channel, guys, I actually don't do spoilers. That's right, thanks Eminem, guys. I don't do spoilers in my movie reviews because in my personal opinion, guys, spoilers aren't fair. So the way I work around spoilers is I'll give you elements and stuff like that to talk about. So when you do actually go and see this movie, you'll know what I'm talking about when I reference certain things, but I don't actually do spoilers because they just aren't fair. So one of the opening sequence events in this movie that actually cracked me up and made me laugh, and I found it very fascinating re-watching this movie, was one of the cast members, Emmett, who is played by Cillian Murphy. He asks a question to the daughter, Regan Abbott, who is played by Millicent Simmons. He asks her a very specific and very interesting question. And the question that he asks her is actually to do with the game that they're watching in the opening sequences of this movie. And it's so fascinating, guys, because pay very attention when you see this movie again. And those of you who haven't seen this movie, when you see this, you'll be like, wow, that's so clever. He specifically uses what he has learnt from Regan's character, literally later on in the movie, in a very vital part of the movie, that actually is the same sign language for for what he needs her to do in that certain moment. But the first time it's used, it has nothing to do with her. Unbelievable scripting. And I mean incredible scripting, guys. It takes an unbelievable amount of finite detail for us as the audience member to become aware of what that was. In fact, in that latest scene in the movie, they actually do a very, very, very similar thing, but it's way more subtle. But I'll talk about that a little bit. So in movies like this, I don't really get scared in movies like this, but when there are jump sequences that really catch you out of the blue, and I tell you what, speaking of catching you out of the blue, it has to be, the timing has to be right, because you, as an audience member, you've got to be following the intensity of the character that we're watching, and then something sort of just takes you off guard. The horn sequence at the start of the movie, where Lee Abbott, played by John Krasinski, he is on the road and someone behind him toots their horn, and that scared me. And I mean that I fully jumped, and I was not expecting it at all. I think there's approximately 3 really, really well executed jump scares in this movie. And it's funny because I don't actually, in my personal opinion, think this is a scary movie. It's thrilling, but it is what it is. But I tell you, that scene made me jump. There are so many different aspects of film and the way that a camera moves from a person to an object, and then literally transforming that object so unbelievably flawlessly that us as an audience member don't even realize how seamless that shift in sequence to the next scene was. In this movie, John Krasinski is playing with his radio in the car. Now, he's about to change the station, and the camera literally zooms in on the radio and then zooms back out, and then all of a sudden, with like absolutely flawlessly, we as an audience member are now in Emily's car. Emily Blunt, who is Lee's wife, and Emily's Blunt character is Evelyn Abbott. She brings it in this movie. Evelyn Abbott, played by Emily Blunt, in real life, is actually John Krasinski's real life wife. So husband and wife actually play husband and wife in this movie. It is fantastic. I kid you not. Her performance is impeccable. And I mean, it is stratospherically on point. Every single actor in this movie brought their A-plus game. Like on the most incredible, impeccable level of it. It is outstanding at how impressive this movie is. But the flawlessness, and I mean the flawlessness of that visual shift happens so much throughout this movie that we as an audience member, it is just one flowed sequence that we don't even realize that what just happened. And when I saw the shift, when I rewatched it, I was like, whoa, that is impressive. That is on point. Man, that's well done. I was just blown away. I was genuinely, absolutely, impeccably blown away by the editing in this movie. It was so flawless. when it comes to film, such as a movie like this, the intensity of an action sequence has to be gripping to the audience members in order for us to be engaged in what's happening. And that is exactly what the opening elevated sequence of this movie, of the beginning of this movie, was. And obviously all other scenes throughout this movie, but specifically the opening sequences, the intensity of how real it was, and just the mind-blowing aesthetics of what it was in front of us, and how it just kept rolling with the punches. It really was an absolute flawless opening to a movie, to just grip us an audience in and hold us to the screen and just literally not let us go until obviously it dies down a little bit and then the subtleties just flow into the rest of the movie. It was incredible. I tell you what, guys, this is a masterpiece of filmmaking, specifically, like I said, for a sequel. It is so hard to pull off a masterful sequel. I mean, honestly. This element of the movie isn't as evident as the rest of the editing in the movie, but one of the more subtle elements of this movie that I found just so well done, because it kept us as audience members on actual track to know where the rest of the movie was going, specifically tying in from the first movie. And that is this right here, guys. Yes, the titling of the movie and the titling of the days in where we are as an audience member watching this movie. It was really well executed, because it really gave us as an audience member an idea of where we actually are in the sequences of what is going on in front of us. And we didn't need to go, wait, when, how, where is this now? It really did paint a very, very clear picture for us as an audience member, so we weren't confused along the journey of what we were being told in front of us. So well done. So those of you who have seen A Quiet Place, as again, no spoilers, but a specific thing happens to Evelyn walking down the stairs, and it is the most hardcore gripping moment of the movie. And I mean hardcore gripping moment of the movie, like legitimately, without question. It is so gut-wrenchingly full on and extreme that they actually try in an essence to recapture that same situation, but this time it wasn't with Evelyn. It was with another character. In fact, it was with her daughter coming down the stairs. And I kid you not, in any way, shape, or form, guys, that same feeling of, oh man, she's going to do it again, was exactly how I responded as an audience member watching this movie. How it ends, I won't tell you, but I will tell you this: it's very different to what we saw in the first movie. I don't normally talk about this in my movie reviews, and not for any specific reason at all, but something was so evident to me in this movie, without question, was actually the score, the music behind this movie. Talk about perfectly woven, seamless score. I kid you not, guys. The score in this movie is absolutely just flawlessly woven into every single sequence of this movie. It is so well done. It's a big deal. It really is. I'm not going to name any other movies that don't have it as that don't play that part as well, because I can think of a few that just off the top of my head, because there are movies that we watch that you just look at and go, wait, what? Like that is a really, just the piece of music just doesn't work for whatever reason. And I'm thinking of a movie specifically, but I'm not going to say anything because I want to talk about this movie. It just does it seamlessly. And I mean seamlessly. It is to the point where, as an audience member, I was just so taken back, just so taken back by how brilliantly executed and so, as I said, so woven it was in this movie. They just knew how to bring us into this movie and just capture us as an audience member to make the scenes totally elevated on every level that it needed to be. This scene that I'm about to talk to you about, guys, John Krasinski was actually talking about when they filmed this scene. Now, Marcus Abbott, played by Noah Jupe in this film, he has a very specific scene at the right towards the beginning of the film, and something happens to him. Now, John Krasinski actually addressed this in an interview. The day that was filmed, his parents were actually on set, and he played what happens to him, and I'm talking about the bear trap. Those of you who have seen the movie, the bear trap scene, and those of you who haven't seen the movie, and when you go see the movie, the bear trap scene, I kid you not, seeing this movie again in cinema, that hit me. Just his performance, Marcus's performance, Marcus as the character, Noah's performance, I kid you not, it gripped. I felt it, and I mean I felt it. I felt every piece of what he was going through, purely because of how unbelievably impeccable acting his was. I mean unbelievably, guys. Seriously, his performance, and I mean every cast member in this movie, is just so on point. But that scene in specifically in particular for him in this movie was so good. I mean, so good. It is just flawlessly, brilliantly executed on levels of just absolute perfection. Honestly, guys, he honestly should have won an Oscar for that, because it was out of the stratosphere of just acting ability. Earlier in this review, I was talking about Emily Blunt, who plays the character of Evelyn Abbott. One of the things that I found so unbelievably, incredibly mind-blowing, beyond mind-blowing about this movie, specifically to do with her character, was her facial expressions. I could not in any way, shape or form find a flaw in the execution of how she spoke with every time she was on screen. Her facial expressions and her mannerisms were just breathtakingly masterful in every level possible. I could not believe how good she was in this film. Just the way she brought what she brought to the scene every single time was outstandingly brilliant. And that's a perfect segue to my next point in talking about character chemistry. For those of you who have been following my channel for any period of time, one of the things that I really personally feel that movies of this caliber need so vitally is character chemistry. Because if we don't buy the character chemistry, the storyline obviously is the storyline. Like, it's got to be a good storyline. But if we as an audience member don't buy their character chemistry on scene, we're not going to buy it. It just falls flat. But I tell you what, oh my goodness, in no way, shape or form did this fall flat. The character chemistry between Marcus and Regan Abbott, the brother and sister, absolutely flawless. Even though they didn't have the most extensive scenes together, what they did have was so well done. Honestly, it really was the thickness and the reality that us as an audience member needed for us to be convinced of what we were watching on screen, and they were so good. In fact, it won't surprise me at all if they have multiple scenes in movies later on together in their career, because man alive, their chemistry was just palpable. It was fantastic. I gotta admit, guys, another scene in this movie that made me jump, and I mean really made me jump, was actually the train sequence when the birds flew off. Oh man, did I jump. Again, the jump sequences in this movie were so well executed. It got me every single time. It got me every single time. And I jumped. Man, did I jump. So towards the end of this film, there's actually two sequences that we're watching, and they're literally running parallel to each other. And one sequence is actually loud and full on, and just the audio of it and the action behind it is really full on. And literally adjacent to that, literally the following sequence is actually complete opposite, polar opposite, and they're trying to completely just show the difference between light and day, the real difference. It was incredible because both of them had an absolutely extreme ending, and both of them were literally lined up to a point in where the rest of the film needed to flow and finally come to a conclusion. Oh my gosh, you guys, just wow. And I really mean unbelievably wow. They were just so well done on so many levels. It really was breathtaking to just see that fleshed out. It was outstanding. Now, this is what I actually mentioned earlier, guys. There's a sequence in this movie where he talks about a certain character talks about something. Now, what they do, they kind of do the same thing but further on down, like later on in the movie, but it's not so far apart this time, and it's actually to do with a boat. If you pay very, very, very close attention, something happens with the boat, and then later on, like probably the next scene and sequence of scenes after it, we see the same boat, but what you don't realize is that is the same boat. And when I saw this movie the first time, it was so quick, I actually didn't understand what was happening, and it kind of confused me. But re-watching this, which I'm going to get to that in a second, guys, made me realize what I saw, and it was like, okay, yeah, no, that's perfect. That makes so much sense. In fact, making so much sense, guys, does A Quiet Place 2. And for those of you who have been following me for any period of time, you know exactly what I'm about to talk about right here. And those who are new to my channel, this is what I think film needs in order to be film, in order for us as audience members to go back months, days, years later and rewatch it. And does A Quiet Place 2 have in its core element the essential thing that it needs for us as an audience member to want to do it again? That's right, guys, what I like to call rewatchability. Does A Quiet Place 2 have rewatchability? Oh my goodness. It has so much rewatchability. I cannot wait to own this on Blu-ray. Honestly, guys, this movie oozes with rewatchability, specifically for, as I said at the beginning of this review, guys, for a sequel. I mean, come on. A sequel needs to be so good for us as an audience member to want to lap it up, and man, this is one epic masterpiece filled sequel to an absolutely incredibly executed first film. So for those who have been following me for any period of time, you guys know what it is. It's time in my movie review to give you guys trivia. Because I just think in a movie review, trivia is like icing on a cake. And who doesn't love cake? So without further ado, guys, before I completely wrap this movie review up, guys, it's trivia time! On the Big Picture podcast, John Krasinski stated that he originally did not want to be involved in the sequel, but the producer convinced him to come over and pitch his ideas to the studio. After 3 weeks, they asked him to write the story with the idea that the directorial duties would be handed over to other filmmakers. Krasinski finally offered to come back as director, jokingly suggested that he was Jedi mind-tricked into signing on to the sequel. According to John Krasinski, in the opening town scene, he passes by Brody's Pizza, a nod to the character Chief Brody from Steven Spielberg's Jaws in 1975. The film's premiere happened on the 8th of March 2020 in New York City. Worldwide release date has been postponed due to COVID-19. Brian Tyree Henry was originally cast but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts. Djimon Hounsou replaced him while the movie was already in production. Described as a classic horror film by revered film director William Friedkin in a tweet dated the 29th of May 2021, the tweet ended with "Cinema is back." Screenwriters Scott Beck and Brian Woods decided not to return to the sequel in favor of focusing on several new projects. So there you go, guys. I appreciate you guys being here. What did you think of all that trivia? Did you find out some new stuff about this film that you didn't know before? I hope you did, because that's exactly what it's about. I appreciate you guys being here. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your time, honestly, being here and sticking through this review. I apologize that it's so late, but hey, better late than never. Thanks to guys again for being here. And don't forget, guys, who's bringing this movie review for A Quiet Place Part 2. Guys, this is Superman Steve, appreciating you guys always and loving your time. Flying out!